Hi there, I'm Chris Barbarian, and I'm the A&E editor for The Medium this year. Welcome to episode 3 of Quarantine Stories, our video series where each week we talk to staff and students about how the pandemic has affected their lives. Today I'll be speaking with Professor Rhonda McEwen, director of the ICCIT, whose research delves across disciplines, from sociology and IT to psychology and VR. I had a great time speaking with Rhonda, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. So yesterday we spoke briefly about how when quarantine all started, you were abroad and then you were able to come back and kind of spend some time with the family up north. And I guess just a quick follow-up to that is, were you able to do any cool things? Did you catch up on Netflix or like read any books? How was that?
No, well, reading for sure. The good thing about being away from the city when I'm up north is that I'm off technology, really. We don't have Wi-Fi, so it all comes down to reading and just enjoying nature, right? That I think the most important thing I did was reconnect with the soil and the trees and the animals and the water, and so that was what I did. And I also did a lot of reading.
That sounds really peaceful and relaxing.
It was.
To start, I mean, you were one of only a few researchers who got help from the U of T COVID Action Fund. I think there was like 338 applicants. And
that's right, something like that.
Yeah, so like if you could, how did the idea come about to study how communication has changed in China and the diaspora?
Well, I've been working with my research team, and we have a project on about robots and trust. So we've been doing some work on social robotics and wearables, looking at how information comes, not just from what we see and hear when we interact with robots, but how our body responds as well. So that project was well underway when COVID started and the lockdown happened. So we couldn't go in to do our experiments. And so I talked with my research team, and were interested in a side project. We've been talking about it for at least a couple of months before the grant potential came up. And we decided to put in for it. And what we wanted to study, two of my research team members are from China. So they are, they are native Mandarin speakers as well. But we wanted to kind of do more research on how technologies were being used during COVID, especially things like robots, social robots, how the health code apps were being used, and look at some differences in the way school or learning was happening across the two countries, Canada and China. So we did put forward our ideas. We put them together and put forward for a COVID, one of the Action Initiative grants, and we got one. We were very delighted. And it's been a fascinating project so far.
Wow. And when you say social robotics, I have an idea because I studied a bit, but if for the listeners who might not be aware, just a brief.
So social robots are robots, and they don't have to take the format of robot in a humanoid form. It can be, for example, what we call VBAs, which are voice-based agents like Alexa or Google Home, all of those kinds of devices, and also toys that people play with as robots as well. So social robots are robots that we interact with, or machines that we interact with for social purposes, in terms of conversation, in terms of seeking information and so on. But they take the format versus like a website. It's more something that can have a two-way interaction.
Okay. All right. That's a lot more clear. And now that we're all in quarantine, we probably have more access to social media if we haven't gone up north and kind of isolated there. But it's kind of like I guess, in my opinion, or in my mind, it could be a double-edged sword. People can connect and maintain their academic stuff like that. But I think there's the growing narrative that you can get too reliant on it for your connections, and it could actually increase loneliness. Like I know in your PhD work, you saw some people would be over reliant on their mobile phones to kind of cause a barrier between them and other people in real world scenarios. So that's a pretty long question, but basically, like, is there a middle ground to social media use, or it's a pretty tricky case?
Well, social media has become a core set of platforms for communication. I think it's very well embedded, particularly across younger demographics. And by younger, I kind of mean the 50-year-olds and younger.
Right.
And I think it's now become pretty established part of our communication network and things we use to communicate. I think the thing to remember is that as human beings, our capacity to communicate never really diminishes. And I don't mean cognitive capacity. I mean our willingness and our motivation to communicate. It's pretty common across any culture. There you find it. And we communicate even in person. We have contentious communication. We have very conciliatory communication, lovely friendships, and also toxic types of exchanges. And we see some of that amplifying on social media, particularly in two sets. One, where people are seeking social support, and I've written about that. And two, where people are being more destructive with each other because they can hide a little bit behind that barrier, and they can really, you start seeing more troll-like behavior, people being very dismissive, being very single-minded and not open to different ideas. So you do see that. People create very tight communities where they're speaking to the people that think like them, look like them, act like them. So we do see quite a bit of that tribalism emerging in social media. Not that it's not there outside of social media, right? I think it can be amplified using these platforms. So in terms of loneliness, I would say that what we notice is that people are finding communities and finding ways to communicate. In the work I talked about earlier with robots, sometimes it's human to machine exchanges, right? Just in a desire to still have some companionship, especially during COVID-19, where the lockdown has kept people away from each other. I think entire neighborhoods have gone the way of, having meetups online to try and simulate being together. And as we start to open up a little bit, you see people hungry for more face-to-face connection, but being cautious and wary. So I think loneliness is a concern for sure. When we are in things like a lockdown where we become very used to seeing each other. And so what people did is they tended to go online instead to maintain contact. And those that are not good at using online platforms did have a problem, right? There's a lot of accounting of of mental health issues that arise that when people are no longer able to stay connected in some way. So I do believe technology has helped. I think it can be harmful as well in certain situations. But I think we just seen a different way of operating during COVID-19.
Yeah, no, and that's very kind of realistic. It's, there is not like a single answer, technology is good or bad. You kind of get both in when you advance in that stuff. And I guess for like students, are there studies going on now that kind of are looking at ways to mitigate loneliness through like these channels that, so like, kids are at school or at home and trying to say keep up with their schoolwork. They're not really outside playing with friends as much. I mean, you do see some people leaving the house, but maybe if they're more introverted or what have you, like, is there studies going on now that look at like, let's say the COVID generation, like will children kind of be more wary when they leave the house, or are they just, is it going to have kind of personality ramifications, if you could say?
Well, we have theories that we're building right now about how all that is working. I think of course, the analysis is still happening. We're still in the middle of the pandemic. However, we are starting to collect the data. Even StatsCan in Canada has collected data. I don't know if hopefully people saw that there was a request from the government for information on, staying active and going outside and seeing people and staying social. But there are researchers like myself and others who are looking at this, and I expect to see quite a number of articles coming out. I saw a special issue that's coming out in a journal just 2 days ago, requesting papers. And it's international. So we're going to start seeing very shortly quite a bit of what's happening. But I think the experiment is underway, right? The social experiment is underway, as we see in Ontario, at least, where the elementary school children will be going back in person. The high schoolers will start in a rotating manner. We will be able to even look within groups to see how that's working out. But the research I'm doing with my team right now is looking at China, because they're about 3 to 5 months ahead of us in terms of progressing through the pandemic. And they've been back out to school, they've been back inside with spikes, but we've been watching to see how students are handling it. And that will be the first set of data that will come out of our research.
That must be really exciting to hear all this.
It's really interesting. Just doing the interviews, we're about 80% through our interviews already, and just fascinating data coming in, looking at some of the differences that we will see across the two countries and in different cities, but certainly and age groups, right? How did younger children, older children, young adults handle the pandemic?
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm really looking forward to reading that. I majored in psychology, so I think it great. Kind of, there's some parallels. So
there are definitely.
Yeah, and I guess so. Are you teaching this semester? And if yes, maybe what classes? And have you kind of navigated how you're going to go about it? Because I'm sure it's a transition as much for professors as it is for students.
Absolutely. I will be doing a remote delivery of my course for the first time this year. So it's quite, I'm excited and interested to see how it will all work out. Mm-hmm. I've in fact roped my research into this course. So the course is called Human Machine Communication, and its code is CCT 202. It's within the ICCIT department, second year course, and in class 11, it's called HMC, Human Machine Communication and COVID-19, and we will be talking about the results of the research project I just talked about, and the weeks prior to that, students will be getting in-depth knowledge. And it's interesting you said you had psych as one of your majors, because psychology plays a big part in human machine communication. And in the first few weeks, we actually looked quite a lot at cognition and perception. Mm-hmm. So as a psych major, you might remember how much comes from perception, and looking at perception and communication with machines. So in that course, I explore that quite a bit, and then we will talk about the COVID-19 project.
So that's great. And I guess ICCIT, you're the what they call it, the chairman or the head of
director
of the department back in 2019. So did you have any kind of general plans for this upcoming school year? Maybe how things might be different if students wanted to seek help, that kind of thing?
Well, it's very exciting. We are kicking off in the next 2 weeks our ICCIT student peer mentorship program, which will, I think, really help students who are feeling a little bit alone and craving some kind of contact. Mm-hmm. We have senior students at ICCIT who will have a group of sort of first and second years, mainly second, to support as they come into this new delivery mode, and this will continue even after COVID. Just I think having someone who's a student who's been through what you're going through, who knows the programs well, who also is finding ways to cope, I think it'll be super helpful. And then they will actually have a group so that they can also the mentors will be supporting the mentees with groups that they can form and meet new people and engage in activities. And as things open up and it becomes safer, to have some socially distanced safe ways to gather with new people, sort of trying to simulate life on campus. Mm-hmm. So that's one good thing at ICCIT that we're doing, and I anticipate that that's going to help quite a bit. For a lot of students who would like a bit more contact and get tired of sitting in their rooms.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's a great idea. I kind of got to the bulk of my questions, but after that, I mean, like, is there anything you'd like to share? Just anything else you'd like to comment on or suggestions, that kind of thing?
I just want to say that I'm really grateful for the work that the Medium and other organizations are doing to get this information out there and to keep students connected. As I said in the beginning, my research is all about communication, and I see how much we can lose in something like a pandemic. I think the basic premise of humanity is that we enjoy um, living a life that surrounds ourselves with love and interaction and even challenge. And I think that we need to see this period of time as part of a challenge that we can take on and maybe discover some new things about ourselves and about the world around us. So I'm encouraging all of our students to take up that challenge and not give up, and to, when we stumble, we know that we can rise again, and to just know that the faculty and staff are all behind their success.
Wow, that's a great line. When you stumble, you're gonna rise up, and yeah, I think it's gonna teach us all that we have a bit more resilience than we know. So
Yes,
that's a really encouraging message. I mean, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. I know you've had a busy schedule. You're doing a lot of research, crunching the data. So, I mean, on behalf of the Medium, we really appreciate this.
My pleasure. And stay well, stay safe, and let's make good use of the sunshine.
Yes, well said.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching this week's episode of Quarantine Stories. Hope you have a great week of classes. Stay safe, wear your mask, and remember to get a little sunshine. See you next week.